Once upon a time, CNN had many viewers, now do they CNN? Lost those viewers when big lies for something like this. So children at the end of the day, CNN sucks.
This is CNN, home of fake news.
In June, during Nevada's primary voting, some voters had to wait in line several hours to cast their ballots during the pandemic. So on Monday, the state's Democratic governor signed a bill into law that would give voters the ability to cast a ballot by mail as long as it's postmarked by Election Day. And now, Trump campaign officials, without any evidence to back up their claims, say the new law is ripe for voter fraud. And they're suing Nevada now for expanding this mail-in voting in the middle of a public health crisis. It isn't ripe for voter fraud. We're going to show you with a fact check of the allegation that Trump campaign advisor Mercedes Schlapp made yesterday on this program.
Let's take the state like Nevada, which in the dead of night, these Democrats push forward this law that, as we know, that even come Election Day, you could still cast a ballot 3 days later if you don't have a postmark, or 7 days later if you have a postmark. So let's say, Brianna, you vote for Joe Biden. Then you find out in Nevada that President Trump wins. You can go to your family members, you can go to your colleagues and say, guess what? Do you still have that mail-in vote? Let's cast it, because you can cast it several days after the election.
No, you can't. Nevadans cannot vote after the election in Nevada. It has to be postmarked on or before Election Day.
That even come Election Day, you could still cast a ballot 3 days later if you don't have a postmark, or 7 days later if you have a postmark, or 7 days later if you have a postmark.
7 days later if you have a postmark.
It has to be postmarked on or before Election Day.
Or 7 days later if you have a postmark.
This is the part of Nevada's law that Mercedes Schlapp is cynically misrepresenting. In order for a mail ballot to be counted, the mail ballot must be hand-delivered or mailed to the county or city clerk by the set closing time for polls. If the ballot is mailed, it must be postmarked on or before Election Day and received by the clerk within 7 days. So that's 1 week.
Or 7 days later if you have a postmark.
Now, this is not unique to Nevada. Many states have provisions like this for mail-in ballots. And Nevada isn't just willy-nilly mailing ballots and applications to everyone. They are sending them to active, registered voters.
Can you stay categorically?
You are fake news.
Sir.
This is, for the first time ever in Nevada, an all mail-in ballot election. What does that mean, Joe?
Well, what that means is that every single voter, including inactive voters in this case, will be receiving a mail ballot in the mail with the address that they provided to us in their registration.
They're sending them to active, registered voters.
Those ballots have gone out, and in actuality, in the next 5 to 6 days, all voters who are in the system and actively registered or inactive have received their ballot.
All voters, been actively registered or inactive.
So I challenge Mercedes over her claims that all of this leads to widespread fraud, for which there is no evidence. But last night, Mercedes tweeted out a voter fraud database by the Conservative Heritage Foundation to try to make her point. But this is actually where I found the numbers that I cited to her during our interview, because they actually show that widespread voter fraud, it doesn't happen. Voter fraud is statistically insignificant. For example, if you look at Nevada in this database, there were only 6 instances of voter fraud over 38 years in the...
A former Pennsylvania congressman has been indicted on election fraud charges. Federal prosecutors say Michael Ozzie Myers paid a Philadelphia poll worker to add votes for candidates in the 2014, 2015, and 2016 primary election.
Widespread voter fraud, it doesn't happen.
Well, the supervisor of elections held a press conference today announcing that this box of 500 absentee ballots had been found. And we want to show you they're already starting to count through these ballots, and it could affect several close races when officially counted.
Widespread voter fraud, it doesn't happen.
So that's the official story. Voter fraud never happens no matter what, and it definitely won't happen with mail-in voting. You're hearing trusted news anchors tell you that a lot, and they say it like they know it. And anyone who disagrees is a conspiracy, not a flat earth or a freak. Probably doesn't vaccinate his kids. They're lying. That's a lie. And we know it's a lie because fraud via mail-in voting already happens. Not speculating. Do you have Google? Look it up. Ballot harvesting is the problem. Ballot harvesting is a process in which a third party collects and then turns in ballots on behalf of another person. It's only possible with mail-in ballots. Obviously, you can't do it with in-person voting. Laws around ballot harvesting vary from state to state. It's currently legal in 27 U.S. states, but Democrats want to legalize it in all 50, and they want it to be as unrestricted as possible. I wonder why.
A coronavirus death in the U.S. is more than 2,000 times more likely to occur than a case of voter fraud in any type of election. I also want, at this moment, to address some criticism that I have often heard, I hear it a lot, from President Trump's critics, and this includes from viewers, who ask why we talk to Trump campaign officials when they often say things that are verifiably false, like we just showed you. Everyone, they are sending them to active, registered voters.
That every single voter, including inactive voters in this case, will be receiving a mail ballot.
I hear his critics say that the media, by covering untrue statements that he and his supporters make, that they're giving life to lies. And I've thought a lot about this, but I have to disagree. We have to challenge lies. We have to challenge falsehoods and conspiracy theories. If you don't, they fester, unchecked and unchallenged. You cannot just ignore BS. You've got to shovel it.
A mob of MAGA hat-wearing high school students surrounding a Native American.
And I seen that group of people in front of me, and I seen the angry faces. And
CNN has settled a $250 million defamation suit Sandman filed. It's over a confrontation with the Native American man that made the teenager look like the aggressor.
3 CNN journalists resigned following a retracted report on the Senate's Russia investigation. The retracted story, published on CNN.com, focused on Anthony Scaramucci.
Exactly 31 instances of voter fraud out of more than 1 billion instances. I mean, we're in a pandemic, so I would say, Mercedes, you have bigger problems than this.
These guys are liars, okay? They don't care about voter fraud at all. All they want to do is use voter fraud as an excuse so that they can come around and go, oh, you see that? We have to make sure that everybody has an ID, which costs money, which a lot of people don't have. Oh, well, look at that guy, gee willikers. It turns out a lot of the people who don't have IDs are Democrats.
I'm going to ask you again. Do you think it's okay after November 3rd to be able to cast a ballot 3 days after or 7 days after
Mercedes,
the election? November 3rd.
Mercedes, yes or no? You're saying that voter fraud is a thing, and I'm telling you that it's not, and you're muddying the waters. And I also wonder, don't you worry that that's going to actually hurt you? I mean, isn't that to the point why the president has said when it comes?
Okay, they have left thousands
Mercedes,
of votes.
I'm asking.
I'm just going.
Mercedes,
I can go.
Mercedes,
fact, we can go have
this is like so. This is just pointless. Okay, this is pointless. I get it. You're just saying a bunch of crap. Okay, you're saying a bunch of crap.
Can I tell you what? No. Let me tell you.
We're talking about no. We're talking about voting in a pandemic. We're talking.
All of a sudden,
okay.
You don't let them have a conversation with them.
We're talking about voting in a pandemic. Okay. We're talking about people trying to. Can you listen, Mercedes? I need you to listen to me. Okay? Let's focus and have a serious conversation here. We're talking about voting in a pandemic and giving people the ability to vote if they are a registered voter. And you seem to be talking about putting obstacles in their way to that.
A North Texas woman on trial for voter fraud said she had no idea she wasn't a citizen when she voted. While Rosa Maria Ortega has voted at least twice, she is not a United States citizen.
Absolutely not. I am asking you a question that do you believe that a person should be able to vote after the election day? Meaning, can you cast a ballot 3 days following the election?
We'll have to continue.
That's a valid question. That's what they're doing in Nevada, and that is unacceptable.
We'll be checking that, Mercedes. It was very nice to have you. Mercedes Schlapp, thank you so much.
The ways it could invite fraud are obvious. Think about it for 10 seconds. With unlimited ballot harvesting, there is no state supervision, no chain of custody, no limit on the amount of ballots a single person can collect. Ballot harvesters could go to people's homes, and they do in California. They pressure them to vote, or to vote the right way, or they help a person read through a ballot while nudging them on whom to vote for. But why stop there? A ballot harvester could ask or pay a person to sign and turn over a blank ballot, or they could trick them into handing over their vote with an unsealed envelope, allowing the harvester to fill in incomplete ballots, or simply throw away ballots that don't vote the right way. And of course, this reveals what the real agenda behind universal mail-in voting is. It's not about improving access to the ballot box. We've had this system in place for 240 years. It's about power. It's always about power. As with illegal immigration, or their relentless efforts to stoke race hatred in this country, which you see every day, Democrats have calculated that hurting America will make it easier for them to get power and keep power permanently. In breaking news, as we speak, Nancy Pelosi is over on MSNBC pushing for additional mail-in voting. We're flagging that right now. Someone in our control room is watching.